Thank you very much. So I'm Wyrwoll from the University of Western Australia, and I'd just like to thank the Physiological Society for the opportunity to speak about a program of work that I'm leading, Extreme Heat and Pregnancy Complications, or EPIC for short. So I live and work here. My jet lag's impacting on my coordination. So it's this little pale yellow blob here. So this is actually the unceded lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. And EPIC is supported and guided by Aboriginal elders, leaders and researchers. And I would like to pay my respects to First Nations peoples past and present and acknowledge any First Nations people in the room today. So EPIC is a transdisciplinary project which is been funded by the Wellcome Trust to establish the biological vulnerability to heat in pregnancy. And as we've been talking about over the past few days, the impact of climate change is a wicked problem. It is complex, it's interconnected, and it's resistant to simple solutions. And heat is a pressing health issue. And in priority populations, but in pregnancy, which is physiologically such an incredibly demanding process, we know that people are susceptible to the adverse effects of heat. And this associates with complications such as preterm birth, fetal growth restriction, and also stillbirth. However, we have a limited understanding of what's occurring in the actual pregnant body during heat, which is contributing to these adverse outcomes. So EPIC and a number of excellent other projects have been funded by Wellcome to address this challenge. Now, I'm a reproductive biologist, so at the core of this is discovery science. However, we have leveraged the Australian context of diverse climatic zones. We represent all the global climate zones with the exception of the polar regions. We have an overlay of robust health data, and in addition, we have multicultural populations. So this means that we can integrate these understandings to obtain a deeper appreciation of the problem and also the potential solution. So in this innovation think tank, I'm going to provide you with some insight into the structure of this project and how we are going to achieve this. So over the duration of EPIC, we have embedded community engagement, and this comes about through an Aboriginal steering group, as well as an existing communities of practice on climate change and health. And this comprises of members of the public, researchers, health professionals, policymakers, and also government representatives. And so this engagement feeds into the three key aims of EPIC. The first one is lived experience, so qualitative research. This is where we aim to understand the experience and the deep knowledge that people have of living with heat whilst pregnant. And we are focused on several key priority populations: Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, migrant populations where their natal countries are from high heat and they've moved to different climatic zone contexts. And in addition to that, urban, rural and remote populations in different climatic regions of Australia. These different climatic regions also come into play in our environmental epidemiology aim. So we are having a look to see whether heat exposure is potentially differentially impacting pregnancy outcomes according to the climate zone that people are living in. And last but not least, we have a discovery or basic science theme. The majority of this theme or aim is focused in on an experimental model of pregnancy, whereby we are exposing sheep to heat in later gestation, so equivalent to late preterm birth, as this is where so far there is more of the robust evidence around this exerting physiological change and thus potentially contributing to pregnancy outcomes. So the understanding that we obtain from each of these aims is going to feed into a process of co-design and production of deliverables where appropriate to prevent the impact of heat in pregnancy. And this is scaffolded by our involvement in the Healthy Environments and Lives, or HEAL network, which is a nationwide network of researchers which are taking the evidence of the impacts of climate change on health and translating this into evidence and policy. But how are we actually interacting between these different aims? This is one of the key challenges. We're in the second year of the project and we're on a steep learning curve in terms of how we are going to do this. We've taken a few structural strategies to help ultimately move towards a transdisciplinary approach. We've deliberately embedded interdisciplinary PhDs within each of the aims. Further, we're about to establish what we have called seasonal yarns, where we have investigators and interested parties coming together, talking about how the project is going, but more importantly, connecting and understanding different perspectives. And whilst we're pursuing traditional academic outputs, we've also made a commitment to considering other styles of communication, in particularly in the form of storytelling or artistic expression around the lived experience of being pregnant in heat. And this is going to provide a really crucial platform for that transdisciplinary phase of the co-design of the deliverables. In my last few minutes, I want to just think about what we're doing in EPIC and think about the considerations beyond. The first thing I would like to raise is that Aboriginal elders consistently highlight that maternal and child health is a key priority. So Auntie Anne Paulina calls it a universal health denominator. If you focus on maternal and child health, you don't just have immediate benefits for those individuals, you influence lifelong health trajectories and you have broader community and societal benefits. Further, the structure of EPIC offers a framework for climate health challenges across sectors, and it's a really nice example of how physiology can be embedded simultaneously with other disciplines to obtain a holistic understanding. As good as physiology is, it has its shortcomings, as does every other discipline. So if we merge these together, we can obtain a more comprehensive overview. But establishing and sustaining transdisciplinary context actually requires long-term investment. So for those of you in the audience, there's a few things that I would like you to consider. So for government and policymakers, embed maternal and child health as a core indicator in your considerations of climate and health strategies. For funders and philanthropists, encourage and support sort of flexible, broad horizon sort of projects which have embedded iterative, community engaged research. And then for researchers and also institutions, we need to be not only fostering but also rewarding environments with which we have these sort of collaborative, big picture, inter and transdisciplinary sort of approaches. So collectively as a community, we need to better cultivate the skill sets, relationships and institutional support needed so we can collectively drive meaningful and lasting change. I'm looking forward to talking to you about this in more detail. Lastly, I'd like to acknowledge the support of funders and institutions and also the incredible people that I work alongside. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. It's really right on time. So we have 5 minutes for questions for Caitlin. Anyone has burning question for Caitlin? Yes. Please go ahead. Do you have any microphone? Yeah.
Thanks very much. Really interesting. Do you have trouble being accepted by the people in some of these communities Because we've been working out there with Ampolina's mob.
Oh, you know,
Yeah, okay, with Victor Hunter and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there is a trust issue, isn't there? And I think it goes back to the intergenerational trauma.
Yeah, and research is colonialist, it's extractive. Traditionally, there's been a huge period of unlearning that I have had to do and will have to continue to do. I have a lot of gratitude towards Auntie Mara West, who I started yarning with around 5 years ago around drinking water quality, and it is, you know, moving into heat. That's actually how I know Anne, through the drinking water quality work. And it's about working alongside, it's about showing up, it's about listening, and it's about embedding Aboriginal researchers and people and Aboriginal governance and data sovereignty. It's a very different way from how we are traditionally raised as basic scientists in doing work. So yes, trust and relationships and going with no agenda and not wanting to get anything out of it. It's got to be informed by the priorities. This is actually one of the tensions with the EPIC project. So brilliant scheme in terms of the announcement, but the rapid turnaround meant that we couldn't do the deep consultation with the elders that we needed to do. So there's been a considerable amount of work in terms of developing the relationships to actually get the approval. I'm very grateful that we've been given approval for the health data by the elders to actually be able to look at Aboriginal health context in this project. Yeah.
Brilliant. Any other question? Yes.
Thank you very much. It's a really enjoyable presentation. So as we have been discussing a lot about physiology, of course, physiology is important and also heat. So both they don't exist or operate in a vacuum. There is syndemic, social, cultural, and other political, gender norms, all those things operate in this. So to understanding this along with the physiological impact, so what do you suggest, which would be the, to make it really interdisciplinary, and all disciplines are not possible for a project, but key disciplines which you suggest they should work together to bring a kind of a full picture?
I think first of all, the community co-design and consultation throughout is integral, but actually, whilst I'm a discovery scientist, it couldn't occur without the qualitative aim. So it's understanding the lived experience and the opinions and the work that we have, preliminary work that we have coming out from very remote northern Australia, is that life is so challenging that exposure to heat in pregnancy is not even a concern. You've got to get on. There is so many other things that you need to do. That is a really useful context to have, because if there are risks associated, then there is the possibility in a culturally appropriate way to communicate that information so that people at least have agency and can be informed around action if they are able to do so. Yeah.
One last and brief question. Who first? Who raised their hands first? Okay.
Yeah, hopefully quite a quick question. Do you just look at pregnancy, or do you look at newborns as well? And if not, is there anyone who's doing research on the heat impacts on newborns?
In the epidemiology aim, we will be looking at newborn health outcomes as a consequence of gestational exposures. But yes, there are other people who are funded to also be looking at the newborn context. So it's really elegant in terms of who has been funded, because I think comprehensively we're going to be able to weave together a really nice understanding of all the different components. Yeah, breastfeeding is another consideration within all of this. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.